All right. Wonderful, wonderful. Good to see everyone this morning. Smiling faces.
Say it louder. 6
What?
o'clock, December 3rd. Is that louder?
Thank you.
Okay.
Friday. It's a Friday.
Yes.
If you need to know that.
That's for the class Christmas party.
Yes.
Hopefully this year we'll have a great time. I mean, we always have a great time.
We had an awesome time that time you didn't get to come.
That's because someone didn't invite me. You see what I have to put up with. All right, let's jump into our 1 Samuel 28 and 1 Samuel 30. If you wonder what happened to chapter 29, we did that last week. Should have been here. All right, faith versus fear. Heavenly Father, thank you for your holy word. Thank you just for how you encourage us, even in discouraging times. We're thankful that we can just trust you to give us grace for each day. Thank you for your word. Thank you for each one here. We pray you'd bless your word to us, that we would see our Savior. In Christ's name alone, amen. All right, David has been 16 months in the land of discouragement. Hopefully what we're learning here is, how do you handle discouragement? How do you get out of discouragement? That's what we've been looking at here. The Lord has been working with David, humbling his heart, because one reason that David got into the land of discouragement is that he just started to grow distant from the Lord. It can happen in a day, it can happen in a week, it can happen in a month. And David was just not having that fervent love relationship with the Lord. But God is going to design, orchestrate, or allow, whatever your theology says, but he's going to do those things and work in David's heart to bring him back to him. That's oftentimes what God's doing in your life, is he's bringing you back to him. He'll constantly be bringing you back to him. So we picked this up. We left this off last week. 3 days later, when David and his men arrived home at their town of Ziglag, they found out the Amalekites had made a raid into the Negev and Ziglag. They had crushed Ziglag and burned it to the ground. They had taken captive the women and all who were there, both young and old. They had not killed anyone, but had carried them off, and they went on their way. So basically, the Amalekites were coming back for some revenge against David. They came into Ziglag, and there was obviously no one in Ziglag except the women and children. Where were all the men? Yep, they were with David, and David had committed to be on the Philistine side and fight against Israel. So the Lord worked that out, that he could get out. But here you have, when David and his men reached Ziglag, they found it destroyed by fire. Their wives and sons and daughters were taken captive. These are David's 600 men. I mean, he's got some other men with him now too, but these are his core 600 men, their wives, their sons and their daughters. Here's these hardened, battle-strong soldiers, and they are weeping. They are crying because they realize they've lost everything. The chances of them finding their kids and getting them back is probably zil. The Amalekites probably had 4,000 or 5,000 troops, and so at this point they are beyond discouraged. They are to the point of just breaking. Then David and the troops who were with him raised their voices and wept until they had no more strength to weep. That's a pretty intense discouragement. That's a pretty intense moment of absolute despair. Again, though, the problem wasn't that God couldn't rescue the children. The problem was that David's heart was far from the Lord. Getting the wives and the children back is not a big deal for God. Getting David's heart back is always the challenge. Pain, grief, and loss consumed David. David was greatly discouraged, and that word in the Hebrew means to be vexed, to be squeezed into a box. He was just completely, utterly boxed in with what had happened, because the men were talking about stoning him. Each one was bitter in his spirit because of their sons and daughters. But David found strength in the Lord, and we went through this extensively last week. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Sometimes the Lord wants to bring you to the end of your rope so that you'll finally, honestly, humbly look to him. It's a tough place to be, but it's the best place to be. And then we talked last week about, in order to avoid the land of discouragement, do not lose sight of the promises of God, do not lose sight of the goodness of God, and do not lose sight of the cross of Christ. David didn't lose those. He realized God was his Savior. So David said to Abiathar, "Bring me the ephod." I love this. This was the plate that the high priest would wear. It had the Urim and the Thummim stones on the shoulders, and it had 12 stones implanted into the brass breastplate. And again, each stone stood for one of the tribes. So the symbology is that the high priest, i.e. Christ, wears us on his heart before the Father. So that's the symbolism there. And so David finally has come to the end of himself and saying, I've had it. All of this, it's been good 16 months. We've gotten a lot richer. We've got a lot more cows. We've got a lot more money. We've got a lot of clothes. We've really made a name for ourselves. But you know what? I have not been walking with God during this time at all, because during that 16 months there's not one psalm recorded, there's not one prayer recorded, nothing in the scriptures tell us that David had any real fellowship with God at all, except when he finally breaks. And sometimes in my life God has finally broken me, and then comes the blessing. The ephod is David's way to ask and receive for answers from the Lord, direction, timing, strategy, and David breaks before God, pours out his heart. So David found strength in the Lord, and we said that word is shazak. It means to make strong or to prevail. It also means to seize or to grasp. And I told you it was like the angels when they came to Sodom, Lot and his wife, and they're just all dickering around trying to remember what to pack to get out of here. I mean, everything's going to be nuked. You've got to leave now. And finally the angels, shazak, they grabbed their hands and just said, we got to go now. And they just jerked them out of that town before the fire fell. And I thought this was so interesting because sometimes you've just got to push through and lay a hold of God. Sometimes you've just got to take time quietly on your knees with your Bible and just push through the feelings. So much of the time, discouragement is just feelings, and you've really got to take control of your feelings and say, I am going to stay here until, God, I hear from you. I need you. I cannot let go of you. You've got to push through. And I wanted to give you 3 examples of pushing through, because I think if we can learn that sometimes it's just up to us to make a decision that I am going to lay hold of God and I'm not going to let go. This is what a couple of illustrations. Jacob on his deathbed, and his oldest or his youngest son, one of his youngest sons, Joseph, now has 2 sons, so grandsons, Manasseh and Ephraim. And Joseph is going to take his grandsons to Jacob and have him bless them. But Jacob's on his deathbed, Israel's on his deathbed. And it says, when Jacob was told, your son Joseph with Manasseh and Ephraim has come to you, Jacob reached down and pulled a hold of strength. He rallied his strength and sat up in bed. Imagine him hearing that word, and then he says, even though I don't feel good, I'm close to death, he found the strength. He reached down, he laid a hold of strength to be able to meet his son and grandson. Jonathan, when he secretly goes to David, remember David has been betrayed by the town of Keilah, and he's hunted by Saul, and Jonathan secretly goes to him. Saul's son rose and went to David at Horesh and strengthened his hand in God. In other words, he pointed David back to the promises of God. David, you're going to be king. God has promised this, so I know it looks horrible now, it looks discouraging now, but God is going to get you through this situation. And one last illustration, King Asa. He was a good guy, but he was overwhelmed by serving the Lord. There was so much to do. There was so much apostasy in the land, and there were so many traitors that were trying to stick a knife in his back, and he was getting very, very discouraged. And the prophet came to him and said, if you seek God, he will be found by you, but if you forsake him, he'll forsake you. During those dark times, it was not safe to travel, great turmoil in every land, nations are in upheaval, but as for you, be strong, shazak, be courageous, do not give up, for your work will be rewarded. Just different illustrations of people that didn't give up. David could have just let discouragement take him over into the absolute depths of despair. But at the most critical time, he just said, I've got to seek God, and I've got to seek him now. Because if I don't seek him now, it's over. In times of discouragement, fear, or just your cold heart, find strength in the Lord. Sometimes you know your heart's cold. It's up to you to get back with God and say, God, I have been wandering, and I need you desperately. The great God guides. God is going to work out a miracle because God responds to the humble heart. God responds to the broken heart. David asked the Lord, should I chase after the band of raiders? So Abiathar's brought the ephod. Abiathar hears the request, lays it before God, and the different stones would light up, which would indicate God's yes or God's no. It was usually a yes or no question how God would respond through the ephod. And the Lord told him, pursue. Chase, follow, hunt after him, what the word means. You will surely recover everything that was taken from you. In the Hebrew, it's pursue. For overtaking, you will overtake, and delivering, you will deliver. I mean, that's pretty strong when the God of the universe says, it's a done deal. You're going to get everything back. Pursue them. Go for it. So remember, they've already been hiking for 3 days from Aphek to Gath. Now they've come to Ziglag. They found it burned. They found their wives and their children gone. And God says, pursue them. And so now David is going to pursue them about another 15 miles. Okay. I mean, this is on foot here. This is not horseback, camel, or Uber. This is on foot. They are exhausted. They are tired, and they are literally huffing it. They are hiking, running, moving very, very quickly. David set out with his 600 troops, the one that have been with him the whole time, that were with him, and they came to the Besor brook. Okay? Now that sounds kind of quaint, the Besor brook. Let's all take our shoes off and walk in the nice water and maybe take, a little dip. Let's refresh ourselves here. Okay, that's where the Besor brook is. Here he is, David, he's back in fellowship. God is going to be with him, and it's always smooth sailing. Once you say, God, I'm going to be serious about following you, it's just smooth sailing.
Why not?
Yeah. Okay, you want to follow God. David set out with the 600. They were with him. They came to the brook Besor. Okay, that's the brook, and that's a hard picture to see because it's such a big distance. But this is, it'd be better to get rid of the word brook. That's actually not the best Hebrew translation. The best word is it's a ravine. It's a gorge. It's a narrow, steep ravine with water rushing through it. Now, again, there's no water rushing through this at this time. That's why they didn't use a babbling brook, but they used the word Besor. But the place was dangerous. It was steep. In fact, this place is still here, but nowadays they've put a suspension bridge across it. So you can just hike across the suspension bridge and get across to the other side of the Besor brook or gorge or ravine. So, here it is. God, I'm going to get serious with you. I'm going to read my Bible every day. I'm going to get up early for quiet times. I'm going to be serious about going to church. I need the fellowship. I want to build relationships. I'm going to be faithful to be in Sunday school. God, I'm going to be serious with you. And then all of a sudden, smack! It just seems like everything falls apart. Wait a minute, God, I was being serious with you, and now I'm having more trouble than when I wasn't serious with you. Yeah. That's how it works. Because in the world, you will have tribulations, you will have thlipsis, you will have pressures, you will have stresses. But be encouraged, take courage. I've overcome the world. As we've said so many times, it's the pressures, the stresses, the tribulations, the breaking times that God has designed for you and me here, because in these opportunities are the only times these classes are going to be offered so that you can learn more about the heart of God and the attributes of God. If you don't press into these trials and learn more of God through them, you will enter heaven still wearing diapers. God wants mature sons and daughters. He wants those that know Him, that know His promises, His words are sure. And the one thing that produces maturity is stress, pressures, trials. Don't ever fall into the trap thinking that my goal in the Christian life is get to a point where I have no more stress. That is a false deception. That is not how God wants to mature you. We're going to have a period of time like that for all eternity with no stress, no pressures, no tears, no heartbreak, none of that problems. But now God is sovereignly, wisely, lovingly using all of these stresses, and you can fill in the blank for yours. I don't want yours, you don't want mine, but He's using those to draw us to Him so that we can truly catch an image of Him. So they get to the Besor ravine, the Besor gorge. It's the longest river in Israel, southern Israel, apart from the Jordan. The Jordan's about 156 miles. The Besor is about 50 so miles. So this is no small little babbling brook that they just hop over like bunnies. This was a major significant obstacle, but they have to get across it. Otherwise, the Amalekites are going to get away. Following God's will is never easy. In fact, everyone who wants to live godly in Christ Jesus will hit a brick wall. That's the MH version. I think it says you'll be persecuted, but my Bible, it says you'll hit a brick wall. So David set out with the 600 men who were with him, and they came to the Besor gorge. where some stayed behind because 200 of the men were too exhausted to cross the ravine. So unless you understand what the Besor Gorge is, you're like, what are these guys, man? They're just wimping out on us here. No, they have been traveling for about 5-6 days now, hiking every day, carrying their packs, pushing it through, obeying David, pushing it more through, and then they get to this gorge, and they are just, it wipes 200 of them out. I can't climb down it, I can't ferry across the water, and I can't climb up the next side. We're done, David. But David and the other 400 men continued in the pursuit. Okay, why would David, against all odds, being completely exhausted, a third of his men conking out on him after about 7 days of marching, why would he press on? Okay, what? Okay, well, the first one, does he want to put the beat down on the Amalekites? Yeah, maybe. You guys are too smart. Feeling lonely, missing his 2 wives? Yeah, no, you're right. Because God promised that he would have complete victory. He had the right motivation to pursue. Yeah, did he want his wives back? Absolutely. Did he want to put a smack down on the Amalekites? Sure. But that wasn't what just kept driving him. He knew, I'm going to win. I'm going to win. God is not going to let me down here. Well, don't we have the same promises on this side? God is going to get us through. No matter what the problem is, financially, emotionally, family, whatever the crisis is, God has promised to get us through. Yeah, but it hurts. Yes, but God's promised to get us through. I feel like quitting. We all feel like quitting, but God has promised to get us through. God does not want quitters. Quitters won't be in heaven. You need to press on. It's hard. I know it's hard. But God has given us promises that we will be victorious. David's life reflected his confidence and trust in the character and promises of his great God. He had a big God. Again, it wasn't how big is God, it's how big is your God. When you know God, what do you see? I mean, how big is he? Is he able to get you through the problems, get you through the struggles? Or is it just going to be up to you to figure it out? No, David had a big God working for him. So when you face a ravine, faith can overcome. David was learning to have a strong faith and a heart in the promises of God. Faced with a deep ravine, and some of these ravines can be even deeper, or a bridge out, or maybe you've just got your daily frustrations and setbacks in life, God is faithful. God is our refuge and strength and ever-present help in times of trouble. Therefore I will not fear, though the earth gives way. Psalm 46:1. For you, O Lord, have rescued me from my troubles and helped me to triumph over my adversary. Psalms 54:7. As for me, I call to God, and the Lord saves me. Evening, morning, and noon, I cry out in distress, and he hears my voice. If he hears, he responds. David learned to use each obstacle, affliction, and difficult person as a springboard to fly right into the Lord's presence. From there, David would seek the wisdom, guidance, patience from God. You know what the springboard is? Back when I was healthy and young and better looking, I was in gymnastics in high school, and I thought this is a great sport because my sister was in gymnastics, so we'd been doing it for ever since I could remember. And so one of the things in gymnastics is the vault, okay? And so you run down as fast as you can, as hard as you can to an immovable object and hope to get over it. But to get over it, they give you a little help. It's called a springboard or a beat board, but we called it a beat board, but it's a springboard. So you're running toward this immovable object as fast as you can, and God help you if you don't hit this beat board right. Because if you don't, you smack right into this immovable object, and it hurts a lot. This was one of my least favorite sports. That's why I stuck with parallel bars and side horse. This vaulting was for the birds. This is crazy. But basically what you're doing is you're running as fast as you can. This was me in my Asian days. You're like, man, he looks good. I do look good. Look at that form twisting there like a crazy bird. You hit that board as fast as you can, because the faster you hit it, the more energy it will give to you. You know, opposite equal reaction. Boom, there you go. And then it catapults you over that immovable object. So if every time you run into a trial, a flat tire, a difficult boss, a difficult worker, a crisis in the marriage, a crisis in the relationship, crisis in your health, if you use that to immediately drop to your knees and hit the springboard of prayer into God's presence, I don't know why I've got this, Lord. I don't know why you've designed to orchestrate this into my life right now, but I am bringing this to you into your presence. So I'm using this problem as a springboard, as a beat board, to catapult myself into your presence. You have the answers. Fixing any problem in your life is not a big deal for God. It will take him zero energy to fix your biggest problem. The biggest problem is our hearts, is that we don't come into his presence. We just hang on to that problem ourselves. We don't cast it upon the Lord because he can sustain us. So that's what you've got to do when you come into your problems. Immediately go into the presence of the Lord and seek his wisdom. Okay. Fear wins, destruction follows. So David had marched with King Achish up to Aphek, where they met with all the other Philistines, and they were going to head to the Jezreel Valley to battle. The Philistines had gathered all their forces at Aphek, and the Israelites were encamped by the spring that's in Jezreel. So the Philistines want revenge. Like I said last week, this is the mother of all battles. This is going to be the big one that determines it. Okay? We talked about 10 years ago, the Philistines' hero, Goliath, had lost his head to David in the battle there. And that was very humiliating to the Philistines. I mean, to lose the war is one thing, but to lose your hero and the war is another thing entirely. They want to expand their territory because, see, they're just on the coastal plains right now. They're not into the hill country where Israel occupies. So they are moving their forces into the hill country, and they want to take that over. Plus, they want to depose King Saul. They hate him. Plus, they see that King Saul is weak, his best general has defected in their minds, and that Israel's spiritual leader has died. When a nation loses a spiritual leader, trouble lies ahead. So now it's time to settle the score. Okay, so Saul has placed himself in checkmate. So here's where we stand. Samuel has died, and all of Israel had mourned for him. He was buried at Ramah in his hometown, and King Saul has banned from the land of Israel all mediums, witches, and those who consult the spirits of the dead. The Philistines set their camp up at Shunem, okay? So they come in from the southwest, and they go across the Jezreel Valley, and they kind of camp on the north there. Saul had gathered all of his army, and they camped at Gibeah, or Gilboa, the mountain of Gilboa. Okay, so they're on the southern. So the Philistines are on the north, Israel's are on the southern flank. When Saul saw the army that the Philistines had, he was afraid, and his heart trembled greatly. And in the Hebrew, this word means totally freaking out, is what's going to happen here. Saul looks at this massive Philistine army, and the problem is they've got tanks. Well, they don't have tanks, but they have chariots, which are pretty much like tanks, except you don't have to use gasoline. And the Israelites don't have those. Remember, they even have trouble sometimes getting their spears sharpened for a while, but they've got chariots. This is why the Philistines picked the battlefield. If you're going to win a war, pick the battlefield. They picked the battlefield, Jezreel Valley. Why? Because it's one of the best places in the world to have a tank or a chariot battle. So that's why they went all the way up to the Jezreel Valley, so they could take advantage of their chariots. Chariots don't work real good in mountains and hills. So that's why Israel would always win the hill battles, the mountain battles. But Philistines said, we're picking the battle. We're using our best assets. We're going to win this war here. So close up, okay? When times get tough, seek the Lord. And when Saul inquired of the Lord did not answer him, either by dreams or by the Urim or by the prophets. This is where Saul makes a big decision. He drops to his knees, he cries out, he repents, he says, God, forgive me, I've been a complete idiot. I seek you with all my heart, I humble myself, and then God's going to answer him. Is that what your Bible said? No. When times get tough, you don't seek the Lord, you seek a witch. That's what you need to do. Seek a witch. Google witches, local witches. Okay, no, don't do that. Saul then said to his attendants, okay, this just gets more bizarre. Find me a woman who's a medium or a witch or who can talk to the dead, so I may go and inquire of her. And then his attendants like, well, no, King Saul, you got rid of them all. No. Hey, there's one in Endor. Okay, let's think about this for just a second. The Israel is camped here at the Mount Gilboa. Endor's over there to the north. Okay, what's the problem with this command to go find me a medium, go find me a witch? Number one, what's the problem? You're looking for a witch. I mean, have you not read your Old Testament? No, I haven't, obviously. He wants to seek a witch. I mean, that even shouldn't be on the front page or even in the newspaper. It's just, that is completely wrong from the get-go.
But it once again confirms he's crazy.
Well,
Yep.
I was thinking, but I wasn't going to say it. I mean, get real. He's been that way for a while.
He's been crazy for a while. Thank you. His advisors even know where one is. That's even a little more scarier. Wait a second. Okay.
Because they're supposed to.
Yeah. I'd like to know what the Israeli lottery numbers are for next week. Okay. This is a bit scary. Typically, his advisors were Abner and Amasa. So, okay, these two guys are like saying, hey, we know where one is. There's a good witch in Endor. Okay, and the last thing, she's on the other side of the battle lines. Okay, wouldn't that cause you to think, maybe this isn't such a good idea? Maybe I really shouldn't go seek her because I'm going to have to cut through the enemy lines just to find out if I'm going to win or lose the war. Jewish tradition says, because I thought about that and I thought, now wait a minute, how would his advisors know where a witch is? That just seems weird to me. That seems wrong to me. Jewish tradition said that the two men that accompanied Saul, which would be his two top advisors, more than likely, Abner and Amasa, it was that Abner's grandmother was this witch. And the thing was, is why did this witch, out of all the other mediums and witches, still survive in Israel? Is because Abner was watching out for her. So there has to be a connection there. Now, when we get to heaven, you can double check, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But that makes sense to me because it would have to be a family connection. And I mean, for his two advisors to even say, well, I know where a witch is, it's like you just broke the law. So there's a connection there. That's what Jewish tradition says, but there's a connection there. So anyways, we're off to see the wonderful wizard of Endor. Nah, that wouldn't work, though. We got to go to Oz. Poor Frank Baum, he wouldn't have liked that. Okay, so Saul designed himself by wearing ordinary clothing instead of his royal robes. Then he went to the woman's home at night. So he went about 10 miles out of the way to get to Endor at night. I mean, I don't know what, 2.5 miles an hour, 3-4 hours there, huffing it. Accompanied by two of his men, probably Abner and Amasa. I have to talk to a man who has died, he said. Will you call up the spirit for me? Okay, this woman is very cagey. First of all, she doesn't recognize them, okay? And if one of them was his grandson, I'm not sure how often he'd seen her either. They're wearing a mask and they're wearing goggles and stuff. I don't know. Anyways, she's very cautious because she knows that the penalty's death. Are you trying to get me killed, the woman demanded. You know that Saul has outlawed all mediums and those who consult the spirits of the dead. Why are you setting a trap for me? Okay, when someone tells you, I love this in Isaiah. Oh yeah, 1 Isaiah, that's even better. 1 Isaiah 8:19. When someone tells you to consult mediums or spirits who whisper and mutter, because that's a lot of what they do, should not a people inquire of their God? Why consult the dead on behalf of the living? That's interesting there, because that's the same thing that this guy's going to say. One ringy-dingy, two ringy-dingy. Okay, let me connect you now. Okay, Saul took an oath in the name of the Lord and promised, as surely as the Lord lives, nothing bad will happen to you for doing this, which would probably start to make me a little more concerned. Wow, this guy's really serious about this. Okay, finally the woman said, well, whose spirit do you want me to call up? Okay, well, I thought about that. Who would you call up if you got one phone a friend? Who are you going to call? Elijah? Yeah, hey, he put to death 400 prophets of Baal. Gideon, he knows how to take care of the Midianites. I would, or Joshua, let's just go for the big guns. Let's just wipe them all out. Call up Samuel, Saul replied. Now here's where the scriptures don't tell us what happened because it happened immediately. As soon as he says, call up Samuel, it starts happening. She didn't get time to set the candles and light the incense and do some hocus pocus. Boom. When the woman saw Samuel, she cried out at the top of her voice and said to Saul, why have you deceived me? You are Saul. The king said to her, don't be afraid. What do you see? The woman said, I see a God, Elohim, a God, not the God, but a God coming up out of the earth. Okay, so she sees this. The inference is a glorious, like angelic, glowing being is coming up. Or materializing, beam me down, Scotty. Just all of a sudden, this being is like just coming into focus here. Okay, what does he look like? He asked. The old woman an old man wearing a robe is coming up. So it's possible that first there was an angelic escort, and then Samuel followed, or Samuel was a little bit out of focus, and then he became more in focus. So there could have been two beings there. It's hard to figure that one out. Then Saul knew it was Samuel, and he bowed down and prostrated himself with his face to the ground. And then Samuel just lays out. Now, the question is, well, is this a demon, or is this truly Samuel coming? Okay, I tend to go to the camp that I think God, in a very bizarre, supernatural, wild kind of once in an eternity type of thing, brought Samuel back from Hades, okay? Not hell, Hades, but just the place of the dead where they were abode. Okay, so Samuel shows up because the witch didn't even start to bring that up. As soon as he mentions Samuel, it starts happening right away. And the other thing is that this person begins to recite exactly what Samuel has already said. I mean, there's truth being said there. If there was any deviations in the truth, then I would think that it could be a false spirit. But only truth is said. There was no twisted words. There was no deception. If the woman was just making all of this up, she would have had the spirit image said, you're going to win tomorrow. You're going to win and be victorious. Then Saul would have probably paid her a little more. And if Saul wins, she lives and it's great. If Saul dies, well, things happen, spirits change their mind. But now Saul's dead, so he can't kill her. So there's a whole lot of thinking you could put into that. But I tend to think that God supernaturally brings Samuel back for just this encounter. Samuel said to Saul, "Why have you disturbed me from bringing me up? I'm in great distress," Saul said. Not Samuel, but Saul. "I'm in great distress." Yes, we know. "The Philistines are fighting against me, and God has departed from me. He no longer answers me either by prophets or by dreams." Now, what did Saul leave out there? What was the last way that he had said God's not communicating with me? The Urim. And who is the one who interprets the Urim? The priest. Where are the priests? Oh, that's right. You slaughtered them all. You had Doeg kill 70 priests. Yeah, you may not want to bring that up to Samuel because that's not a good idea. You killed them all, Saul. That's why you can't consult the priest. Now, again, Abiathar has the ephod. He was smart enough to grab that when he left because he was the only priest that survived. So, yeah, that's right. You killed them all, so that's why you can't use that. "So I have called on you to tell me what to do." Oh, now you're going to listen to me. Samuel said, "Why do you consult me now that the Lord has departed from you and become your enemy? The Lord has done what he predicted through me. The Lord has torn the kingdom out of your hands and given it to one of your neighbors, to David." I just don't think a spirit would say this. "Because you did not obey the Lord or carry out the fierce wrath on the Amalekites, Yahweh has done this to you today. Yahweh will deliver both Israel and you into the hands of the Philistines, and tomorrow you and your sons will be with me. The Lord will also give the army of Israel into the hands of the Philistines." Well, I mean, the reality of the truth is an uppercut, left, right, boom, Saul's down for the count. I think he knew this might be coming, but to hear it from Samuel is like exclamation point on it. Immediately Saul fell full length to the ground, filled with fear, not faith, fear, because of Samuel's words. His strength was gone. He had not eaten nothing all day that day and all night. When the woman came to Saul and saw that he was greatly shaken, she said, "Look, your servant has obeyed you. I did what you asked. I took my life in your hands and did what you told me. Now please listen to your servants and let me give you some food so you may eat and have strength and get out of here." Why does she want him out of the house? Yeah, well, life in danger, because if the Amalekites come and find her with Saul, she may be an accessory and they may kill her too. I mean, he's a loser. He's going to lose. You want the losers out of your house fast. You don't want to have anything to do with the loser. Get out of here, Saul. I think she's just, plus I think she's freaked out. I think she's a little freaked out because it's like, whoa, I don't know what just happened there, but I had nothing to do with pulling that spirit up. Something bigger is going on here. He refused and said, "I will not eat," but the men joined the woman, urging him, and listened to him, and he got up to the ground and sat on a couch. She butchered a quick meal, made some bread, unleavened bread, because she didn't want to wait around for the yeast to rise. He leaves and goes, basically faces his destiny. So here, let's wrap it up. We have David on the one hand. He found renewed strength in God after a time of living in discouragement. He sought the Lord with a whole heart. He was honest. He was sincere. I mean, God, here's my sin. Here's my failures. Here's my shortcomings. But I want to change. I want to be honest. I want to be humble. I want you to take control of my life. I want to believe your promises, and I want to know that you are faithful and true, because you are. David caught up with the raiders, the Amalekites, attacked them, recovered everything the Amalekites had taken, including the 2 wives. Nothing was missing, small or great, son or daughter, nor anything else that had been taken. Now that was a miracle, and David brought everything back. But then on the other hand, we've got Saul. I mean, he started out good. He had a good heart. I mean, but he let pride, he let the fear of man finally take control. He would not fully obey God or respect the authority of Samuel. He ends up committing suicide and losing his 3 sons in one day on the battlefield, which is tomorrow. The Philistines were in hot pursuit, and Saul and his sons, and they killed his son Jonathan, Abinadab, and Malchishua. I mean, could you imagine? You're fighting, and again, remember, they started to fight in the plains, but Saul retreats to Mount Gilboa, because he's hoping he has at least an advantage there on the hill to high ground. Saul was critically wounded by the archers, but arrows can fly uphill just as quick as downhill. And he finally falls on his own sword. The Israel army is defeated. The Philistines occupy many Jewish towns. Total defeat, total annihilation. Do we live a faith in God's promises, trusting in his goodness? Or do we live in fear, a fear that overwhelms, a worry that God may not come through for us? Questions, comments?